Hey, what's going on, movers? What's going on, shakers? Hey, welcome to another episode of Moving Towards Greater, this platform where we talk about all things that are related to moving towards your ultimate destination, being on the right path towards your journey, getting to the place where God intended for you to be. So, this platform is called Moving Towards Greater. I am your resource, Dr. John Eaves, and I am so happy and thrilled at the response that you guys are giving towards this channel. Myself and my wife, Dr. Jackie Eaves, we are very appreciative of all the support and the comments and just the love that we've been getting since this platform was launched about a month ago. So again, I am your resource, Dr. John Eaves. And today we are in the midst of another Power Move segment. So we launched this segment last week called Power Moves. And a power move is anything that propels you, that pushes you, that gets you to your ultimate destination. Or it might not even be your ultimate destination. Really, a power move just might be to get you to the next point in your trip. You know, if you're making a trip from New York to Los Angeles, you're going to have several stops along the way. And also, as you have those stops along the way, you're going to need to stop and refuel and replenish so you can get to the next segment or the next point of your journey. So those are called power moves. All right. We need those power moves to help us not just to complete the entire race or the entire journey, but we need those power moves to get us from segment to segment. So if you look at life and you look at the things that are going on, sometimes we literally try to break off really more than we can chew. All right. So instead of doing that, take it in small bite-sized steps, baby steps, take it in segments and make sure you got your fuel, make sure you got your replenishment, make sure you have the right amount of power in order to get you to where you need to go. So here we are. Today is February the 5th. We are in the second month of this new year, 2026. Again, if you like this content, please like, comment, and subscribe. We really would appreciate it. It really does help the channel. It helps get this information out to more individuals. And we are living in a time where so many people are desperate for information. All right. And not just, we're not selling anything here. We're not, trying to, pull the wool over anyone's eyes by any means. Again, I said, I just want to be your resource. I just want to be, the guide, the coach, whatever you may, want to call it, to just impart information, to impart knowledge. And that's why we're here. That's our purpose. So let's get into this segment of Power Moves. So today, I kind of want to talk about this little saying that we have, or this little phenomenon that really is used a lot more in the younger generation. It's called crashing out, crash out, right? So what is a crash out? A crash out is when people just flip their lids. They lose, their confidence. They lose their cool. They lose whatever self-control they had. People can crash out for a moment. They could crash out for a couple of weeks. People crash out indefinitely. But the thing that I want to be able to talk about and kind of reassure you of that a crash out it definitely does not mean that it's the end of your course. All right. So think about that for a minute. Think about what I'm saying. When we crash out, when we flip out, or, whatever you want to call it, when we get to that place where, we feel like there is no hope, we don't know where to turn, we don't have the wisdom or the guidance to complete our course. And we have just, it's kind of like those cars that you see broken down on the road. They're just sitting there. And how long are they sitting there? They're sitting there until assistance can come and help them out. Whether that be a tow truck, whether that be a mechanic, some type of intervention has to take place, for that crash or that broken down situation, that broken down scenario to heal itself. Now I get it. I just so happened to be in a bad car wreck about a year ago, and my vehicle got totaled. Right. So, but in the process of my vehicle being totaled, a tow truck, a wrecking service still had to come and tow it off the side of the road. And then I still had to go through the process of dealing with, insurance claims and paperwork. in order to get another vehicle so I could resume my journey and have a consistent mode of transportation. So when we have a crash out, all right, when we have a breakdown, when we're no longer able to, for a period of time, we're not able to complete our journey, that's when we need to pause and reflect and ask ourselves, okay, what do I do now? How do I fix this situation? How do I get back on my path so I can reach my destination? Because make no mistake about it, we are here. God put us on this earth to be prosperous. He put us on this earth to for a mission, for a purpose, and in pursuing that mission and purpose, we all have a path we have to take. And so many of us get consumed, or we get stuck, or we crash out, and for a period of time, we're not able to reach that destination, reach that journey. So I'm here to tell you today that there is hope. Your resource, Dr. John Eaves. I want to share some things with you on today that can help you in the moment when you are having that crash out. All right. And speaking of which, again, I know that's a term that's used more and more with the younger generations and our youth of the day. They talk about crashing out, and as a father, who has one young adult and one teenager, I get to see it quite often, and that's what's imperative, that those of us with wisdom and understanding. I heard a great scholar say something the other day, that when I'm talking, when I'm teaching, I'm not teaching students, I'm teaching teachers. So what does that mean? So I want to convey or impart information onto you that you can turn around and go and use to teach others. How's that sound? All right. So that's what So when I'm talking to my son or my daughter, and I realize that they're in one of those crash out moments, the first thing we have to do is reassure them, that hey, all hope is not lost. This doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Yeah, you have come to a little bit of a setback, at this time, but you can overcome this. All right. There is not an obstacle that you might be facing, that you are currently facing, that guess what, that someone else has not already experienced or learned how to navigate and overcome that. So think about that for a minute, write that down. Anything that I'm going through, chances are likely that there's someone else that has already experienced that exact same thing, and they learned how to navigate it, and then they became successful at doing it. All right. So crash outs are common, but it's not the end. And I want to show you some things in our verse of the day that help us to understand why a crash out is not the end. And it's just so appropriate that our verse of the day comes from the book of Matthew, chapter 11, verse 28. And Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. So as I'm looking at that and I'm exploring that, I really see three things that the Lord is telling us when it comes to when we are weary, when we are heavy laden, when we are burdened. I really see three things that jump out, to help us in that situation. Those three things that we got to understand. The first thing we got to understand is that when Jesus says, "Come unto me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." First of all, we got to understand it's an invitation. You have been invited to the party. You have been invited to the place where there is rest, where there is peace, where there is abundance, where there is resources, where there is everything you could ever hope, ask for, or imagine. You have a personal invitation. You can come. All right. Now, but here's the part that, so many people get messed up in. You've been invited, but so many of us choose not to show up. All right. So ask yourself that question. If I know I already have an invitation, why am I not showing up? And I'll tell you this, I was having a conversation with my son on this week, and he faced a dilemma in a class project that he had. And one of the things he said, was we said, well, first of all, I didn't understand. I said, okay, it's okay not to understand. I said, and then, well, did you ask for help? And he said, no. I didn't ask for help. And I was like, why? He said, well, I don't like asking people for help. And this is not an indictment against my son, because so many of us today find ourselves in that same situation because of pride, because of ego, whatever we have going on. We don't want to accept help. We don't want to accept the invitation that has been given to us. So look at your situation. Look at where you are financially. Look at where you are spiritually. Look at where you are in your relationships. Look at where you are in your career. And ask yourself, am I really into the place where I want to be? And if you're not where you want to be, that's okay, because understand it is a journey. But then ask yourself, well, have I completely crashed out? Have I not made any forward momentum or any forward progress at all? And if that's the case, then you got to ask yourself, well, what's holding me back? Is it pride? Is it ego? Why have I not accepted the invitation? That's the first thing. And then the other thing that this scripture offers us is it offers us a promise. The promise is rest. So once you receive the invitation, you're going to get into a place where there's rest, where there's peace, where there's tranquility. There's a whole lot of things going on in the stock market this week. There's a major sell-off that's happening. People's portfolios, including mine, started at one level, and they're dwindling down. And the first thing, a crash out is easy. To panic is easy. To be overcome by fear and anxiety, that's easy to do. But how do you find a place of rest in that type of situation? Again, the word of God is offering us, first of all, the invitation. The invitation that you can come into this place where there's peace, where there's rest and tranquility. And then the promise is, once you get there, there's rest, which is interpreted as a spiritual peace, a relief for the soul, and freedom from the burden of trying to save yourself. Too many of us are trying to save ourselves. We want to be our own savior, and but the word of God is telling us that, I've already promised you that if you allow me to, and I think I talked about this last week, if you allow God to invade your territory, and where's your territory? Your territory is your heart. Your territory is your life. Your territory is your thought process, your way of thinking. If I can replace the way that I'm thinking, if I can replace, these negative thoughts that I'm having, and I can replace them with the tranquility and the peace of Jesus, then guess what? I'm going to find my place. I'm going to find myself in a place of rest. I'm going to find myself in a place of refuge. Because, and then here's the final thing. Because once you see the invitation and you accept it, once you believe the promise and you accept it, and the third thing is that there is an exchange. The exchange is taking his yoke and learning from him. In doing that, individuals will swap out their heavy load. Your load is heavy. Crashing out is heavy. Being a person who is, always walking under the spirit of anxiety or fear or anger, that is a heavy load. All right. And it drags us down and it depletes so much energy, from you. Yeah, you see those people that, you're like, man, your energy is just way off because they're heavy burden. They got so much going on. They have not made the exchange of their heavy burdens for God's peace and tranquility and his easy yoke. All right. You see how that works? So when we take the invitation, when we receive the promise, and when we give an exchange that we have, which is heavy, for what he has, which is light, which is rest, which is abundance, you're no longer crashing out. All right. You're not on the road to crashing out anymore. You're back on track. You're back, in your car. You're back, making that trip, between New York and California. You're cruising down the interstate. You're not speeding. Don't speed. All right. You're riding down the interstate. You're passing vehicles, appropriately. When they're slow, you're getting around them. You're able to finish and complete your journey because you avoided being delayed. Sometimes in a crash out, you're going to get delayed, but you avoided the possibility of not completing the journey. So that's why the platform of Moving Towards Greater was created, because We see so many people in our families and in our friend circle, in our sphere of influence. We see so many people that get burdened down and they never complete the journey, or they get stuck and they're making very the progress and the improvement is very, very small and it's barely even noticeable at times. So we said, hey, this is not right. We were created to move towards a greater level, and that's why we're here. Again, I'm just your resource. I'm not, I don't claim to know everything, although I do have a lot of experience. So if there's something, from a financial standpoint, if there's something from a parenting standpoint, if there's something from a marriage standpoint, there's something from a business ownership standpoint, is there's, I've been through all that. I've been broke. We say broke without a joke. Money was funny, credit wouldn't get it. I've been through all of those seasons in my life. But guess what? Through experience and through understanding and through faith, guess what? We're able to overcome those. All right, so let's talk about what's going on today overall. I like to look at things from a national or a overall global standpoint. And then I like to turn around and and break it down so we understand how it applies to where we are right now. All right. So one of the headlines out there is that the U.S. plans to conduct a mineral trading bloc to counter China. So there's so much that's been said, about the relationship between the U.S. and China. All right. And I studied this for a little while when I was in the military. You all know I was in the Navy for over 20 years. I was stationed out in the Pacific. I was stationed in Japan. I've been, spent a lot of time in Hawaii. I spent a lot of time, around Korea and everything. And the thing about that particular territory, that part of the globe, is that China has a whole lot of influence in the Pacific region. All right. And China came to the decision that they didn't just want to be a regional power. They came to the decision and they came to the mindset that, they wanted to be a global power. They wanted to expand their influence just beyond the Pacific to around the world. So a lot of times you hear about, China making deals in Venezuela. China's making deals in Africa. They just announced a trade agreement with Canada. Guess where Canada is? That's our next door neighbor. So China is always making moves because, they want their global influence to increase. And at the same time, they want to try to limit the impact of America's influence. They don't want America to have all that power over in Asia, to have all that presence, to have all that dominance, right? So so there's always this little bit of a back and forth between the U.S. and China, and it all has to do with influence, and it all has to do with power. Those are two of the most strongest, emotions trait, when it comes to people, when it comes to countries, when it comes to relationships or whatever. People are really, really big on influence and dominance and power. Sometimes it ain't even about the behavior. Sometimes it ain't even about, the positive traits you want to see, because they're like, look, hey, can I influence? Can I dominate? And can I have power in a certain situation? Because countries and individuals, they believe that if they can master those three things, they can get whatever they want. All right. So the U.S. just announced a plan for mineral trading bloc to counter China. What does that mean? Let me tell you a little bit about it. The current administration announced Wednesday that it wants to create a critical minerals trading bloc with its allies and partners, using tariffs to maintain minimum prices and defend against China's stronghold on the key elements needed for everything from fighter jets to smartphones. We're talking about minerals, all right? We're talking about minerals that come out of the earth. And I'm going to get to why this is important in terms of investing in just a second. But when you understand, minerals, certain parts of the world are rich in minerals, and then other parts are, not as prosperous. They may have some of them, but they don't have them to the same abundance as other places in the country. All right. So China just happens to be one of these countries that has a lot of minerals. The U.S., we have some minerals, but maybe not to the extent that China does. China makes a lot of deals over in Africa because guess who is very, very rich in mineral and resources? Africa. Now, the only problem with Africa is they don't have the necessary infrastructure to go down into the earth and pull those minerals out. Well, why are these minerals important? Well, as the article just alluded to, we're using these minerals for pretty much everything in life. Fighter jets, that's defense. But guess what? Guess what? A big source of these minerals are used for your smartphone, your Apple or your Android, your tablet, computer chips. These minerals play a big deal when it comes to producing these things that we use on a day-to-day basis. Come on, you can't walk any place in America. I don't care if you deep south, if you northeast, west, Chicago, LA, Seattle. You can't go any place in the United States where someone is not, using cell phones, where someone is not using these lithium batteries. That's lithium. That's one of these minerals, right? So it's become very, very important because it's products, it's commodities, it's things that we use on a day-to-day basis. All right. So now that I've introduced you to kind of what the importance behind these minerals is, let me share something else with you. When you look at companies, now I want to shift for a minute. When you look at companies, when you look at a company like USA Rare Earth, ticker symbol USAR. All right. Right now, today, it's trading at a stock price of $21.88. It is currently down, for this particular trading day. But when I look at how the company has done year to date, it's done over an 81% return. 81% return. When I look at how the company has done over a 5-year time period, it's had a return of investment of over 112%. So what does that tell me? That tells me that this company is growing by leaps and bounds. Now, again, I have invested in rare earth minerals. That company, I'm currently not invested in it right now, and I'm not telling you to go out and buy shares of the company. I'm just sharing with you things that I have found in my research that when you do your own analysis, it might be something that you might want to eventually buy some shares in, or maybe not. For some people, it might be too risky. But when you look at this company, USA Rare Earth, it engages in mining processes and supplying rare earths, those minerals I was talking about, and other critical minerals in the United States. It explores minerals like lithium and other critical minerals. The company holds interest in companies in Texas, Oklahoma, all over the United States. And watch this, was only founded in 2019. So when people look at, well, how do I move to the next level? Well, you have to make a conscious decision to invest in things that are going to help move you to the next level. All right. So what do I mean by invest? That's a topic, that's a theme that we use a lot on this channel, moving towards greater. We talk about investing, primarily investing in your future. Investing from a standpoint that we have to understand and realize at some point, we may not be able to go out and work a traditional job. That's the other thing that just came out, that the job report that they just announced, like within the past week, that there were less jobs and more layoffs. What does that mean? So that means that, traditionally people have gone out and made their living to support their families by going out working, a 9-to-5 job. And again, I think I've told you before, I'm not knocking a 9 to 5 job. I worked a 9 to 5 job for many, many years. But here's the thing that you got to be aware of. While you're working that 9 to 5 job, you have to be disciplined enough and conscious enough to know that this could end next week, next month, next year. It could end tomorrow. How many times have you heard of someone who was working a job and the leadership of the company came in and said, "Hey, we're going to sell the company, or we're going to downsize, or we're bringing in AI technology." Come on, Amazon. They've already announced that they're getting ready to place a significant number of their workforce with robots and artificial intelligence. So the likelihood very well exists that in the near future, and when I say near future, I'm talking like 3 to 5 years, that within the near future, the number, and we're already seeing evidence now that, the number of jobs that we once had is not abundant as, is what we have now. All right. So we have to do some things to hedge. What does a hedge mean? We have to do some things to hedge to offset any potential losses that we may have from the results of losing the job. And for me, traditional hedges for me have been investing in the stock market and also investing in real estate. Because if I make an investment in a company like USA Rare Earth, and I invest $100, or let's say I invest $1,000, and it had a 81% return. So now that means my investment has grown from $1,000 to over $1,800. All right. So, and guess what? That occurred without me having to show up on a job, to punch a time clock, to meet a performance deadline, to deal with a crazy supervisor or crazy coworker. All I had to do was do a little homework and decide to put my resources into a place where it was going to give me a return. And that is what we mean by moving towards greater. So this has been your Power Move segment for February the 5th. I pray you got something out of it. I pray that this was beneficial to you. So leave me some comments. Like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think of this Power Move segment. Let me know what you think about crashing out and having to recover from a crash out. All right. I want you guys to keep in mind that we do have a potential live event that is coming February the 21st. That's only a few weeks from now. We're going to give you some more information on that. If you're in the Central Arkansas area, you'll be able to come out and meet with us live and in person. But if you're not in the Central Arkansas area, we're going to make available, whether it be Zoom or whether it be via this platform, for you to participate with us virtually, because we do know that we can stay connected even if we're in a virtual mode. All right. So again, hey, I just want you to prosper even as your soul prospers. So remember, if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Nothing is impossible. You can achieve. Just believe, and not only believe, but put that belief into action. And that's what we're here to do every day. In Power Moves and moving towards greater, we want you to put those beliefs into practical action so you can achieve for your future and your family and your financial legacy. So again, I'm your resource, Dr. John Eaves. Thank you for joining me on today. God bless, and we'll talk again soon.